What I love about this story is the way it's communicated that the animal, the Buddha, comes back as a goose and is able to teach the king the lesson. That things are always in constant change, how quickly life really moves. And again, I love some of the lines in it as well, just the echo, Icarus, and chasing the sun. So I hope you enjoy. Once upon a time in Varanasi, during the reign of Brahmadatta, the teacher took rebirth as a swift goose and lived surrounded by a flock of 90,000 geese in Chittakuta. One day he went with his flock to the plains of Jambudipa and ate the wild rice growing in a certain pool. Then he flew up into the sky back to Chittakuta with his great retinue in a leisured way, as if in sport, and as if stretching out a golden mat that extended the whole distance of length of the city of Varanasi. And then the king of Varanasi saw him and said to his ministers, "This one must surely be a king, just like me." Conceiving an affection for him, he took flowers, garlands, and ointments and looked out for the great being, caused all kinds of musical instruments to be played. When the great being saw the homage that was being paid, he asked his flock, "When a king pays such homage, what does he expect?" They replied, "He wants to be friends with you." "Then let the king be friends with me," he said, and he went back and made friends with the king. One day, when the king was in his leisure garden, he went to Lake Anotata, and the bird arrived with water on one wing and sandalwood powder on the other. While everyone was watching, he sprinkled the king with the water and scattered the powder on him right there and went back to Chittakuta. From that time on, the king longed to see the great being and sat and watched the way he came, saying, "Today my good friend will come." Now, two of the youngest goslings in the great being's flock decided that they would like to have a race with the sun and asked the great being's permission. "We'd like to race the sun," but the great being replied, "Children, the speed of the sun is very swift. You will not be able to race him, but will perish on the way, so do not go." They asked a second time, and then a third time, and even on the third time he refused. But they, stubborn in their pride and without a true reckoning of their strength, decided to race the sun without informing the great being. So just before sunrise they went to the top of Mount Yugandhara and perched there. The great being, missing them, asked where they had gone. When he heard what had happened, he thought, "They won't be able to race the sun. They'll perish on the way. I'll go and save their lives." And he too went to perch on top of the Mount Yugandhara. As the rim of the sun came up, the goslings took off and flew alongside the sun. The great being flew with them. The youngest raced into the morning and then felt exhausted, as if a fire had been started in the joints of his wings. Then he made a sign to the Bodhisattva, "Brother, I cannot." And the great being said, "Don't be frightened. I'll save your life." Enclosing him in his new wing as a cage, he soothed him and took him to Chittakuta mountain, settled him in the midst of the geese, and then flew back again, caught up with the sun and accompanied the other. Now, this one raced with the sun until almost noon, and then became tired, as if it was a fire had been kindled in the joints of his wings. Then he made a sign to the Bodhisattva, "Brother, I cannot." And again the Bodhisattva comforted him, and using his wing as a cage, went back to Chittakuta. Now at that moment the sun reached its zenith in the sky, and the Bodhisattva thought, "Today I'll put my bodily strength to the test." With one swoop he flew up to the top of Yugandhara, perched there, and then, with one swoop, caught up the sun. At one point he was in front of it, and another behind. "My race with the sun is pointless, and has arisen from unwise attention. What is the sun to me? I'll go to Varanasi and give my friend the king a talk about Dhamma that is suitable and to the point." Then he turned, before the sun had passed the middle of the sky, and encircled the whole world from end to end. Then, dropping his speed, he crossed Jambudipa from one end to the other, and arrived in Varanasi. It was as if for 12 leagues the entire city was under the shadow of the goose, and no chink could be discerned. As he gradually slackened his speed, chinks could be seen in the sky. The great being slowed down his speed, descended from the sky, and came to rest in front of a window. "My friend has come," cried the king in happiness, and laid down a golden seat for the bird to perch upon. "Come in, dear sir, sit here," he said, and spoke the first verse. "Fly down right here, goose. Your sight is dear to me. You have become master here. Make known whatever you wish." The great being sat on the golden seat. The king anointed his wings with ointments, and 100 or even 1,000 times refined, and offering him sweet rice and sugared water in a golden dish, gave him a welcome of honey words. "Friend, you have come on your own. Where have you come from?" The bird gave him a detailed account of what had happened, and then the king said, "Show me a quick race with the sun." "Great king, it is not possible to show this speed," he replied. "Then show me something like it." "Very well, great king, I'll show you something like it. Summon some archers who are as swift as lightning. The king summoned them. The great being took four and went with them down from the royal abode to the royal courtyard, where he had set up a stone pillar and had a bell tied around his own neck. Then, perching on top of the stone pillar, he set the four archers facing the four directions and gave instructions. Great king, let these four archers release their four shadows, their four arrows, at the same moment to the four directions. I will catch these arrows before they fall to the ground and lay them at their feet. You'll know that I have gone for the arrows by the sound of the bell, but I won't be seen. Then in the space of one moment he caught the arrows that were released, laid them at their feet, and was seen still sitting on the stone pillar. You have seen my speed, great king. Great king, this speed was neither my fastest nor my middling. It was my slowest. This is how fast my speed is, he said. And then the king asked, Sir, is there any other speed which is faster than yours? Yes, sir. Faster than me by 100 times, or even 1,000 times. No, even by 100,000 times are the lifespans of the constituents of these beings, which decay and break up as they come to an end. And so he revealed the breakup of the elements of form as they came to an end, moment by moment. The king heard this talk from the great being, and terrified with the fear of death, could not keep his senses, but fell to the ground. People were terrified and sprinkled water on the king to restore him to consciousness. And then the great being instructed him, Great king, do not be frightened. Cultivate mindfulness of death. Practice the Dhamma. Perform meritorious deeds such as generosity. Be vigilant. Then the king said, Lord, I cannot live without a teacher endowed with knowledge, such as you. Do not go back to Mount Jataka, but stay here and be my instructor, teaching me the Dhamma. And he made his request in 2 verses. By hearing of someone, love is fed, but by seeing someone, desire falls away. By both seeing and hearing, love grows. Oh, how dear you are to me because I see you. The sound of you is dear to me, and so much more the sight, as you are so beloved to my sight. Stay, goose, and be with me. The Bodhisattva said, I would stay in your house forever, with homage paid to me, but you might drunk one day say the words, Let the goose king be cooked for me. And then the king said, But I certainly will not touch any strong drink. To give him a promise, he spoke this verse, A curse be on any food or drink that is dearer to me than you. I'll not touch any drink while you live in my house. After this, the Bodhisattva said 6 verses. It is easy to understand the cry of jackals and vultures, but the cry of men, much more that of a king, is far harder to divine. A man might reckon, he is my kin, my friend, but the one who has been a friend before, might an enemy end. The spirit that is kindred is near to you wherever he is, but the one that lives apart is so, even though he is near. Wherever inside a friendly heart may be, there is a friendly heart too, when across the sea. Wherever inside a corrupt heart may be, there is a corrupt heart too, when across the sea. Even though they live with you, O Lord of the chariots, enemies live apart. But, benefactor of the kingdom, even in remoteness, some may live near in heart. Even a dear one who stays too long may become a foe. So before I become hated by you, I'll take my leave and go. And then the king replied, You do not register the Anjali that pays homage thus and beseeches you. You do not speak a word to those who would attend on you. May we just beg of you this, that sometime again you return. Then the Bodhisattva said, If no accident comes to our lives, if you live, great king, and if I do too, benefactor of the kingdom, then may it be we will see each other after nights have passed. After he had said this to the king, the great being went on his way to Chittakuta. When the teacher had given this teaching, he said, Thus, bhikkhus, formerly, even though I was born amongst animals, I showed the fragility of the elements of life and taught the Dhamma. Saying this, he made the connections with birth. At that time, Ananda was the king, Moggallana was the youngest, Sariputta was the next, and the rest of the flock of geese were the followers of the Buddha. I was the swift goose.